A lot to get into with a big Woj bomb, I guess we could say, for the NBA. A trade has gone down a few days ago now, so I'm sure everybody's heard about it. But Donovan Mitchell from the Utah Jazz is on the move, ending up with the Cavs. A lot of players and picks involved. We'll dive into pretty much every angle of this trade in this episode and our thoughts on winners and losers and all that stuff. We're going to start with the Cavs side. We'll obviously work our way to the Jazz side. The Knicks are involved in this too. So we will talk about that because there was a lot of Knicks hate going on social media. And then we'll do like a generalized Eastern Conference layout now with the Cavs and where we see them potentially next year going forward and all that stuff. But let's start with the basics. The trade in general. What were your initial reactions, Kevin?
Oh, well, I mean, it's a bomb for real. And I mean, you gave Woj all the credit. No love for Shams or Chris Haynes, huh? We're just getting. I don't know. I honestly don't remember who had.
No one calls it a Shams bomb or you know what I mean? Like it's just Woj bomb. It's generic now.
Well, so it's funny because I'm in the mode now where when I go into class, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Like it's the one thing I want to focus in. I don't want to be on Twitter. And literally right as my class ended, somebody goes, Donovan Mitchell got traded to Cleveland. And I was like, whoa, to Cleveland, just because I didn't expect Cleveland to be in the race like that. But I mean, at the same time, give them a lot of credit. I mean, before we get too far into it, the X's and O's, Donovan Mitchell going to Cleveland for 3 first-rounders for Colin Sexton, for Lauri Markkanen, and for Ochai Ajabi. And I know I just butchered that real bad, but there's only one go at that. And unfortunately, that wasn't the right one. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, my first reaction for Cleveland,
and don't forget the picks. I mean,
no, that's what I mean. Yeah, the 3 first-rounders. Yeah,
3 first-rounder pick swaps, all that stuff. Like there's a lot.
And so obviously, I mean, the first reaction for Cleveland is, wow, look at. I mean, the rebuild for Cleveland was obviously we saw a breakout last year. We knew it was successful with Darius Garland looking excellent, with Evan Mobley being right around Rookie of the Year status, somebody who looks really good for the future. And it was kind of an interesting situation because, you know, at the beginning of last season, Colin Sexton got hurt. He was one of their bigger young pieces that it looked like they were going to build around, has dealt with some injury issues. But yeah, you just never heard Cleveland mentioned as a possible destination. But obviously they had the assets to do it. And I think this is a brilliant move for Cleveland. I mean, what a way to just turn it up and take your core to the next level. And to put it bluntly, you didn't really give up anything of value. Like, you have all your main guys still. Like, you know, you now have a bona fide core of Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, of Darius Garland, and of Donovan Mitchell. Like, that's something that I feel you have to feel pretty good about, you can build around, that you can add the supporting cast for. And like, make no bones about it, you gave up a lot. Like, 3 first-round picks is a lot of capital. Sexton's obviously a really good young player. Ajabi was your first-round pick this past year. And then, I mean, Lauri Markkanen, even him, like, you know, he kind of bought into his role. He's one of those guys. But I really like this move for Cleveland. I have questions defensively about how well the backcourt is going to work with Garland and Donovan Mitchell. I guess that's my initial reaction on that front. It's also probably great in that regard then that you have Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen behind them as a front line to kind of, you know, to back that up a little bit. But no, I really like this move for Cleveland a lot. I mean, in the short term, it's going to cost them a little bit of depth. But like we said, look at what this team did last year without Sexton even playing. They had the 7th best record in the entire Eastern Conference. Markkanen was a rotation player. I don't want to downplay him, but for the most part here, you didn't give up any guys that were a part of that last year.
Well, it wasn't Markkanen. I might have my stories incorrect. Markkanen, I know, was upset with Chicago. Was he vocal about not wanting to be in Cleveland, though?
No, he wasn't vocal about all. No.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember. I remembered him being vocally upset. I couldn't remember if it was in Cleveland or in Chicago. But
his situation with Chicago went bad because he had that great rookie year. Like, he was awesome his rookie year, and then he just never really kind of recaptured it like that. And so, you know, other guys just passed him on the depth chart, to put it bluntly, you know, in terms of the priorities with, and I think in a way that's what happened to Colin Sexton. Is it's like he got hurt, you know, he's dealt with legitimate injury issues here. But I for sure think Darius Garland had a big part of that. And just again, the emergence of some of these other guys as well. Talk about a guy like Isaac Okoro, for example, who they get to keep, who's a young guy with some upside still. I really, really like this move for Cleveland.
Well,
Because all these guys fit on the same timeline too. Like that's the other thing to me is it's not it for sure is more of a win now move in a way. Like it puts pressure on them the way they didn't have last year. They were going to have a
sure.
little bit to meet those expectations, but with Donovan Mitchell now, it's like no, it's playoffs or bust, and we probably should win around here, maybe even try to make a push for the conference finals. And so to that regard, there is a little bit more pressure, but I like these guys can all grow together. Donovan Mitchell is locked into a contract, so you're not really worried about that. This isn't a rental or anything right away. You really got to give Cleveland's front office a lot of credit here. And I mean, they took the swing, they read out the market, and they gave up a lot. There's no risk. I'm not suggesting there's no element of risk to this, but to get a young multi-time all-star in his prime like this you could argue that he's not even in his prime yet, that he's about to get into it. So yeah, this is a no-brainer for Cleveland. And I think this is a brilliant move by them.
Well, the Sexton stuff, the reason there was a little bit like he had to do the sign and trade deal to this because he was a restricted free agent. So that was kind of some news that was going on while it was happening. But I agree with you. I like the move. I love the move for them. The Cavs kind of, I guess the vibe with them last year, in my opinion, was obviously very improved. They increased their win total by like 22 games, but they still didn't seem to have that like go-to consistent scorer, and they have that now with Donovan Mitchell, and we've seen Donovan Mitchell be able to be that guy. So they add that in, and so I'm excited to see. I don't see it as much as like you were saying, like a win now move. I almost saw it more as like they are going to win more, right? Don't get me wrong, but because these guys are so young, like it is a longevity. Like they're going to be here to stay for a few years at a minimum, right? Like they're going to be in the playoff hunt, in the talks of that top few teams potentially. I know at the end of the episode we're going to get into our standings and probably tier things out and talk about that a little bit more. So I don't want to jump the gun on that, but it's like you said, it's a no-brainer. You got to do it. It's a big swing by the Cavs. It sounded like the Cavs and the Knicks were the only two teams really at the table as of recent when these talks were going on. And obviously, like you said, we'll talk about the Knicks as well in here in a little bit. But I do want to take it over to the Jazz, who now have like every single pick in the entire
universe. I thought OKC had picks.
That's so have you seen what's going around with this now?
Which part? There's a lot.
Well, sorry. I guess I should be more specific, but where was it? Hold on. They have 13 unprotected or lightly protected first round picks through 2029. So, and they do have 2 first round picks or 2 first round picks from this year on the team for the Jazz. So, what I was looking at, and it was more actually posted before this trade happened, and it was talking about OKC and the quote unquote conspiracy theory that they're going to have all these picks and all these players so they can get LeBron James's kid and then get LeBron James to come play for OKC and do that. And I'm like, but honestly, the Jazz could do the same thing if that's the angle you're going for, because they have so many damn picks.
Neither of them are doing that.
I don't know, man. Did you see, by the way? Oh, well, actually, I don't want to spoil it. It's part of my balling, but there was some college football, basketball going on yesterday with the college football season, I guess, kind of getting rolling. But back to the Jazz. In my book, this means fire sale for anybody that's not a young player. You know what I mean? So what, like Clarkson, maybe Mike Conley, potentially on the move if they can make it happen. I swear to God, if they somehow end up on the Lakers and Westbrook ends up on the Jazz, I'm going to be annoyed. But it seems like maybe they would do something like that to get a few more picks. I know the Lakers don't have it, but
Lakers don't have any picks. I would say they already kind of like,
yeah.
there's not really much they can do there. I mean, I agree with you in the sense, real quick, just going back to the Cavs, that it is, you're okay mortgaging your future when you said when the timeline matches up like this, because they did pretty much mortgage their future, but like you said, it's because I agree with you, and that's what I'm trying to say is this is not a win now move in the sense of there's a 1 or 2 year window, and that's why I like it so much for Cleveland. And to that token, I also love this move for Utah. I think this is great. I am surprised at how quickly it all went south because, look, Utah was the number 1 seed and they couldn't get over that second round hump. And it looked like this year that something big was going to have to change. The way that series ended, or the way their season ended against Dallas when Quinn Snyder got fired, like it sure as hell felt like was a decision between Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. And I got to be honest, I didn't think it would be both of them. But once you moved Rudy and got all those picks and clearly weren't trying to win basketball games anymore, like you had that optionality. And once Donovan Mitchell, like, I'm not suggesting that he was opting out, but like, I think Donovan Mitchell I don't think he would necessarily want to suck up 3 years of just being horrible for a while. And so to that point, move him while you can, get this return back. And that's why I like it for Utah. I think with Utah here, you add 3 more picks to the war chest, like you said, so you can do whatever you want, essentially. You can more or less control the draft. You have all the swings in the world to get a superstar. You're going to be bad enough to potentially get the number 1 pick this year. Like, you're going to be in the running now with, like, San Antonio and Oklahoma City, like we said, with Chet Holmgren not playing. So, like, this is kind of the best of both worlds. And with all those picks, you can get involved in any superstar trade that's going to be out there. Like, this is the NBA. We don't know when these guys are going to become available. Like, would you have thought 2 years ago that Donovan Mitchell was going to be starting next season in Cleveland? Like, I don't think anyone on earth would have had that on their NBA bingo board.
So in my opinion, I feel like I'm happy the Jazz didn't hesitate. Right?
Yes.
They didn't think it was going to work, so they went all in on it not working.
And that's what I like. I like the decisiveness here with Utah. I appreciate them picking a direction and going for it.
Because I feel like, and I go back to the Clippers' big 3 when it was Chris Paul, Blake Griffin. Like, we just kept seeing them hit their head against the wall over and over and over until finally they had to do something. Whereas like this, they kind of got ahead of it. All the guys still had clearly the highest value that they could to get a trade like this going. You got so many picks back. You got so many assets. I know we don't have player names essentially assigned to those picks yet, and so we'll see where those go because that's a big part of it. Now we have to trust in the front office to make the right picks and the right decisions with those picks. But the Jazz really haven't given us a reason to not trust them in that angle, at least to my opinion. So we'll see where it goes. I just back to you mentioned something we were talking about the Cavs and their future and mortgaging a lot of their future too is when you trade away they've traded away a lot of their early picks and in my opinion you don't really need them now because you have your core. So the next few years are kind of putting the depth around that core or getting players that are like, vet minimums that want to come play and be with these guys. So I think that'll be able to help as well,
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's a big reason they brought Ricky Rubio back, for example. And even in their case, you got Karis LeVert too, who they brought in last season. They're pretty high on him, wanting to keep him around. So I like that starting lineup with Utah. I love getting Colin Sexton averaged 24 points a game just this season ago. He only played 11 games last year, but this is a kid who's 23 years old. Again, 11 games last year. 65 games in 2019 and 2020, but 60 games in 2020 and 2021. He's had injury risks for sure. I mean, that was unfortunately with the meniscus tear and then with him just never coming back this past season, like there's definitely that risk, but like, again, look at the upside. Like, you don't just, that was over a 60 game sample size that he was averaging 24 points a game. If you're the Jazz, this is exactly the type of young player that you take a flyer on, and they've got him locked in now for 4 years and $72 million. I think if you decide you don't like him that much, he has the potential here to rehab his value and you go out and you get something for him. But
Yep.
I think you could very well, like Sexton I still think can be a piece on a team going forward, like a good young piece that you build around. He's 23 years old. He'll fit the timeline with all your draft picks that you're going to be bringing in. Because I agree. Like you said it at the beginning of the Jazz talk, I don't think they're done. Like with Mike Conley, with Clarkson, with Bogdanovich, like I would imagine all three of those guys, if not are gone by the time we get to the start of the season, you would imagine by the trade deadline are gone. Because none of them make sense now with a timeline, and they're all players that contenders are going to go after. Especially Bogdanovich. There are 9-10 teams without even blinking that I think should be trying to get Bogdanovich.
I just pulled up the first NBC Sports is talking about, potential next trades. Obviously, Bogdanovich, one of them. And of course, the first freaking team that is on this damn article is the Lakers.
Oh, for Bogdanovich. I mean, well, they should be trying to get Bogdanovich. They're
but
all
the Lakers want the Lakers want anybody. Like the Lakers want anybody at this point, in my opinion.
I could see the Lakers getting, well, maybe not Mike Conley because they have guards.
That's fair. You don't need,
I could see Clarkson going back. I mean, Clarkson was a Laker at one point. He's an LA guy.
I feel like Bogdanovich, like we were saying, probably makes the most sense for the Lakers to want out of those three. But yeah, you're right. Like it's just, I just don't know. I don't know. Something stupid's gonna happen. I'm telling you.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, it always does. No, seriously though, I would genuinely give both teams an A for this trade. I really like this for both sides. It's weird because we always talk about superstar trades kind of being fleecings, but I feel like this was pretty fair value for both sides. Like you got everything you wanted if you're Utah and you picked that, because I agree with you. Utah picked a direction. They did not just try to make something work that wasn't going to work. They didn't waste any time. They know Victor Wembanyama is coming out this year. Like you have a chance to get him at number one. Like I appreciate the decisiveness of Utah's front office.
If you go back, I'm sure like the Clippers are just the team that comes to my mind with the big three. But like I feel
Portland is the recent one. Look at CJ. Portland, they tried to do that for years.
And the Wizards a little bit. I mean, the Wizards have hesitated with Beal. I know Beal has said he's wanted to stay, but they've hesitated. They never.
Paid. No, Brad Beal's getting a bag. That's what Brad Beal's doing.
I know, but like you know what I mean. Like teams that just didn't fully implode it. Maybe they waited 2 or 3 years too long to do something.
Because if Donovan Mitchell, like, I don't think Donovan Mitchell's value is ever going to depreciate that much. Like, he's extremely good at basketball, but
no, but if
he stinks and Utah stinks, it may drop a little bit. You're right.
Or the opposite, Utah stinks and you traded away Mitchell first and Gobert's there and the defense, because he's not as interested, starts to lack, then maybe his value starts going down. And I already feel like, I know the trade was a ton of picks, so they didn't undervalue him, but I feel like a lot of casual NBA people kind of undervalue Gobert's whatever it is skill set. So like, I could have just seen those narratives happening. So that's where I appreciate it from. Like, if you're going to do it, do it. That being said, I was just recently in Salt Lake City, and I did not like the city. I'm going to be honest with you.
Wow. Okay. Why not? I'm here for this. Why not?
Dude, maybe, and if you are from Salt Lake City or you live in Salt Lake City, please hit me up and tell me the good spot.
Right, please direct all your hate mail to Justin.
No, man, because I don't know. We were only in the city for a little bit. We were flying in, flying out. Like we went to Jackson Hole. It just happened to be cheaper to fly out of Salt Lake. It was
it's a bigger
4.5 hours, 5 hours. Really nice airport. Don't get me wrong, love the airport. But we went. I don't know, man. It's just like there were a lot of. It just didn't look, and maybe we were just in a bad part of the city, because I know all cities have certain areas that are like abandoned buildings and all. Like it just wasn't a nice spot that we stopped at for lunch. And I was like, there's no way, I was like, I've always pictured Salt Lake City as this beautiful city. We joked that we saw this little like puddle. We joked that was the Salt Lake. That was the lake.
It's like Utah's got all the nature. Like you got the arches in Utah, you got Zion in Utah.
Right.
So it's just like all that.
Zion,
is
not the player. We're a basketball podcast. Right. We gotta
Zion National Park.
We gotta say that.
All that, like those are legitimately on like high on my bucket list of things to do in America. I've never been to Utah. But like, I've heard it. I've heard that for sure. That's definitely the rep among NBA players.
dude, I just didn't. I don't know, man. Like, and
That's
again,
why
like,
that's why it stinks, because there are, and I talk about geographical advantages. The Jazz always have to. This is why I like the Jazz being decisive, because they don't have a margin to screw up. Like the
yeah.
Lakers did more or less everything wrong for 4 years, other than their drafts were well, with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball. So I guess
But
they
then they
had the
traded
core to
him,
do it, but
so
like they were pretty much a mess and still landed LeBron James. Like that's the thing, is they, certain franchises have more leeway. They always will. I mean,
and
talk about the Knicks. Like the Knicks, because they've been so bad, don't have it as much, but they still get meetings with every big guy. Like no matter how dysfunctional they may be. Miami, I think, is another team like that is always going to have an advantage. NBA players love Miami. It's a bona fide fact.
But to that, New York should have that advantage.
I think it does too. I think the fact that they get meetings still is off New York's pull.
Okay. Well,
now I will say, I think that is gone down less than it has in the past in the NBA, because guys can be superstars anywhere. Like Russell Westbrook was in Oklahoma City for the longest. I mean, he and KD, like look at those two, how well they did in Oklahoma City and how well known they are. Look at Giannis right now in Milwaukee. That's not your traditional NBA powerhouse market, and it doesn't matter. Like the internet has made things like that not matter, which I think is an advantage, because I don't want it to be like, I want the playing field ideally to be even. I just am realistic with the situation sometimes. And that's why I like the moves for Utah.
And that was not to take it out of the sport of basketball, but that was kind of the vibe around Trevor Lawrence when he came to Jacksonville. They're like, oh, this dude's not going to get any endorsements. And then he went out of his way to like shove his endorsements in a lot of people's faces because of those comments. So like,
dude, if you're a star athlete, you're getting an endorsement anywhere. Like it does not matter what player. Also, Jacksonville's 1.2 million people and has a beach on it. Like, what are we talking about?
We just got well, not technically. We got a Division II. You might know this better than me. It is the step below the top for USA Soccer.
you're talking about USL, right?
USL. We just got a USL team approved for 2025. Can you take one guess of the player or person that from Jacksonville that's involved with the ownership?
I already know. I saw your articles. I'm cheating. It's Tim Tebow. I know.
Tebow. Because of course it is. The team should just be called the Tebows. Like,
don't do it, Justin. Don't do that. We can't do. Don't do that.
It should just be the Tebows, man. He is the Clark Kent of Jacksonville at this point. It feels.
No, I mean, look, I hope it does well. Genuinely, I mean, the Armada never really took off like that. I hope the USL is better. Like the USL's had success in some areas. MLS is having more success than it's ever had before. So yeah, of course, I hope it takes off.
But I guess back to my Utah comment, because I know that was a lot of slander. I did love the breweries. The local beers that I had there were phenomenal. I want to love this city because in my mind, it's always been an amazing city. I just didn't have a good first impression. So somebody please tell me it can get better than that.
I mean, look, and sometimes like not every city is for everybody. Like when if people come to visit me in the Philadelphia area, like I don't expect them all to love Philly.
That's fair. Like, but like, I guess the vibe I usually have, like when Nicole and I go on vacation somewhere, like by the end of the vacation, I'm considering living there. You know what I mean? Like,
for sure. Always, 100%.
I did not have that with Salt Lake City.
Okay. Hey, look, it's not for everybody. Like, look, I guess, bro, I was like that with San Francisco. I loved visiting San Francisco. There is no planet where I ever want to live in that city.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Welcome everybody to the Driving Dish NBA podcast. We are for everybody, hopefully. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
I just realized I didn't have a tweet, so apparently I'm not for everybody.
Great. All right.
I keep screwing up the intro.
Here, hang on. Let me see if I got somebody like that. I knew it was going to be way late in the intro. Let me see if I can just pull somebody quick. Let's flip it. I haven't done this in a while.
Or should we just do NBA Wordle as our intro tweet?
I feel like we're so far in already. We'll put Pirtle back on hold. We're 24 minutes in already. So yeah, we'll have a tweet next week. I tried to pull up someone quick. I have a list of NBA players, but none of them were good. So
let me see if I got one. See, the problem is like most players just tweet generic, just very generic things. Yeah, nobody's got anything good.
I should add Donovan Mitchell reaction or something, but oh well.
Here we go. Fortnite time. We got an NBA player streaming on Fortnite last night.
Was it Josh Hart?
No, if I remember our episodes correctly, we talked about him last episode.
We talked about a lot of guys last episode. I'm trying to think.
I know. I can't. I don't think it was because of an injury news.
Are they on the Kings?
No, from your old city.
Oh, is it Terrence Ross?
Yes.
Oh, Terrence Ross is streaming all the time. Yeah, that actually makes sense.
Which apparently, as of 1 week ago, according to Sports Illustrated, there is an article about how the Suns should trade for him.
That would make sense. I mean, look, the Suns are a contender. T. Ross would probably go benefit a contender. I thought T. Ross was going to get traded 2 years ago. Like, I thought that was a lock because there were a lot of teams that wanted him, and that just didn't happen. But it's kind of weird now because, like, I don't think, like, I would thought he was just the OG people, but oh well.
Yeah.
Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spotify, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yep. And follow us on YouTube, the video version of the podcast. If you want to see our smiling faces, you can check that out. YouTube, just search Drive and Dish NBA. We are looking for subscriber number 49 still, so we would appreciate the love if you feel like showing your support.
Yeah, you can tell me in the comments I need to shave too. I know I'm doing it later. And now a word from our sponsors.
So let's get into the Knicks side of this whole ordeal because there was a lot of Knicks slander going on. And the reason was it sounds like some reports are saying the Knicks kind of temporarily walked away from talks with the Utah Jazz for Donovan Mitchell, which then essentially cleared the runway for the Cavs to aggressively pursue him, which ended in this trade that we were just talking about for the last 24 minutes. There's been some talks of the assets that were included potentially in New York's side with RJ Barrett. I think Emmanuel Quickley at one point was talked about, Quentin Grimes. Like, obviously picks were involved, but it sounds like from the Knicks side, they didn't want to include that many picks, which makes sense from a Knicks standpoint. I think even with Donovan Mitchell coming to your team, you're going to need a few more pieces, more than the Cavs do, in my opinion, for going forward. So I guess I didn't fully understand the slander. I get it. It would have been a big name, and Donovan Mitchell was kind of vocal in a way about wanting to play for New York, which was a little bit of concern of mine initially when the Cavs made the trade. It was like, does he for sure want to be there? Was a concern of mine. But I don't think the Knicks were fully wrong, and we kind of talked about this off mic. I don't think they were fully wrong for not going all in on Donovan.
No, fully wrong. I think they were 100% right. If you believe this Woj tweet at the beginning of July said the Knicks were going to give up 3 unprotected first-round picks, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin, and Mitchell Robinson. That's insane to give up all that for Donovan Mitchell because you wouldn't be in a position to win. That's my greater point, is that if you give up all those guys, your team is what? Donovan Mitchell, Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, and Emmanuel Quickley. I don't think that's winning you the Eastern Conference.
And
I would
on
rather
top of that,
I think the team is fine as it is. Like, I like RJ. I like Mitchell Robinson coming back on that 4-year, $60 million deal. Like, Donovan Mitchell to me doesn't take them over the top. And if you give up all your first round picks, it kind of handicaps your ability to get better. Like,
that's
for Cleveland, it makes sense. They were in a position where I'm like, burning all those picks to go get Donovan Mitchell makes sense. You got the team to compete and win now. I don't think the Knicks, if they gave up that deal, which I'm sure changed over time, because I think the market for Donovan Mitchell also changed. Like, I think it was lower.
I heard once, who was it? Who was you were just talking about that signed the deal? Once
Mitchell
he signed,
Robinson.
Yeah, once Robinson signed the deal, he was kind of off the table in terms of the, trade talks. And so I think that's why the Knicks, I know a lot of people were hating on the RJ Barrett signing post because it happened like pretty much right after the Mitchell news. So people were like joking around with it. But of course, I mean, why would you re-sign RJ if you were about to trade him? Like, you know what I mean? So like, I think you waited on that a little bit. But I'm kind of with you. I felt like no matter what they did to get Donovan, it would have kind of handicapped the team too much. They wouldn't have been able to get better and grow with the guys they would have had because they wouldn't have had any picks. And I know New York apparently was trying to, if those picks were in there, they were going to be like top 5 protected, things like that to to keep themselves a little bit safe if it's absolute dumpster fire. But the Jazz didn't want that. So
yeah, I mean, I'm a little surprised the Jazz didn't bite on that initial contract, just because it is like, that's a good, you can start to
juicy.
rebuild pretty, like, kind of, you get all the picks, and with RJ you get the young player who's probably, to me, a little safer than Colin Sexton is. And I mean, the Knicks, to that token, 4-year, $120 million, which I think is the correct decision. Like, RJ, to me, is the crown jewel of their rebuild. Like, he's the guy who, at least for now, you're building around long term. Like, you've got him and Brunson locked in. We'll see what ends up happening with Julius Randle, but if nothing else, you've got those two guys now. It was just too steep. Like like you said, it reminds me what would have happened with Carmelo Anthony, only I think it might have been worse. Like, Carmelo Anthony was at his peak and was one of the best scorers in the league when they traded for him. Like, I think the Knicks with Donovan Mitchell, like, are a first round exit. Maybe they win a first round series and bounce in the second round, but I don't think they get much further than that if that's what they would have had to given up. I would much rather bring back Mitchell Robinson, reward a homegrown guy who's been pretty good when he's healthy, let RJ grow and blossom. Like, you brought in Brunson. All these contracts that they've been signing, like, we've been praising the Knicks for the flexibility here with them, and they're all very tradable, to put it bluntly. I would rather see them just build this foundation up and kind of, just prove that they're good business going forward. And I think I truly believe they can be more competitive that way than they would have been if they signed for Donovan Mitchell. I mean, Donovan Mitchell's a big name and he's a New York guy. So I think that that's immediately why everyone kind of makes the LOL Knicks jokes, because he is a guy who I think genuinely wants to play for New York. Like, I think Donovan Mitchell, before the end of his career, it wouldn't surprise me if we see him play in New York at some point. But if this is what I'm looking at and what it would have taken to make this deal happen and to get him in the Big Apple, I don't know. I truly praise the Knicks just holding off here. I think this was the right decision. I think when they stepped away from the table, like, them stepping away from it absolutely allowed another team to swoop in. Like, that's always the risk of having these talks go out and longer and longer and longer, right?
Well,
the example I always use is that Paul George was going to be a Laker until he went to Oklahoma City. Like, it could get hijacked, and Cleveland, again, hat tip to them, hijacked this deal and made one that made sense for them. But I truly think, like, if you want to make fun of the Knicks, that's fine. This isn't the thing you should make fun of the Knicks over. I think this is a good decision for the franchise.
I completely agree. It's a bummer. I get it from, like, a fan standpoint. You talk yourself into wanting this player and needing this player and thinking it would be fun. The star power would be cool. I just,
You're not going to win a title with that team. If you had made this trade, you are not going to win a title. Knicks fans, more than anything, are thirsty for meaningful basketball and a chance at winning a championship. Like, I don't think people fully understand how nuts it is going to be in New York City if the Knicks ever bring home a title. Like, I've seen the Giants win. The Yankees have obviously won in the past. Yankees' last title was in 2009. The Rangers won in the 90s, but, like, all those sports are kind of split. And I know the Knicks, and with Brooklyn now, there is a split. But, like, let me be as clear as possible. No team in New York City unifies them like the Knicks. Everyone in New York loves the Knicks. If they break through and get it, it's going to be a different type of atmosphere up there.
I completely agree. And so, I hope that the deep diving Knicks fans can understand that there's a bigger picture. I understand it's going to stink, or you're going to be bummed that you don't get that star power name right off the rip, but it is working towards a greater good in a way.
Yeah. Again, just not the time for the jokes for me. There are plenty of other opportunities. All right, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like to start with the good before the bad. So, Justin, I'll start with you this week. Who is balling?
Ohio State. Because everybody in the NBA apparently went to the game yesterday for the football team. I mean, Tatum was there, Evan Turner was there, Iggy was there, LeBron was there with his kids. They started a "We Want Bronny" chant in the stadium. So shout out to Ohio State, just having all the star power for their first game of the season.
Yeah, LeBron's been pretty consistent about always saying that if he played college ball, he would have gone to Ohio State. Obviously,
I wonder if his kid will. Yeah, I wonder how that'll go.
I don't know, man. I thought it was interesting. Like, and here we are speculating about it. I thought Bronny was a lock for Duke until Coach K retired. Now that Coach K retired, I don't know, because they had the Team USA connection. I mean, he's going to get an offer from more or less every major D1 program in the country.
He should. Even if he's not good enough for it, they'll do it just for the headlines, really.
Well, they shouldn't. If you're a legitimately good D1 school, if you're a Kansas or a Michigan State or a Duke or a Gonzaga or somebody who, even though, I'm about to put Gonzaga on pack watch because I've had enough of Gonzaga, but just Gonzaga needs to talk to me when they win something. I'm tired of getting hyped for Gonzaga every single year.
I'm done.
Everybody, all the rest of those squads have obviously won plenty of things before. But yeah, I mean, I think Ohio State's got a great chance of landing LeBron James's kid. Apparently Bryce has been looking great on the circuit too. They're saying Bryce is like, I had a growth spurt and is taller than Bronny now.
Oh, wow.
So that, I mean, they obviously, they just did the Sports Illustrated cover that just came out too, talking about that. I mean, it'd be incredible. I mean, like we said, everything about LeBron James' career has been incredible in terms of just the expectations and the hype that was placed on him from such a young age and, how he's delivered all that. And yeah, I mean, it's unfair to expect his kids to be as good as he is. Because it's just, I mean, it's him and MJ. Like, those are the two guys. Like, they're the two best basketball players to ever live. I don't think you shouldn't hamster your kids like that. But if they, if they're NBA, they look like they're right now both D1 talents. And so I'm sure we'll get to see them on the college scene. And look, if there's a chance of them breaking into the league, somebody will draft them. I don't doubt that. Balling for me is John Wall. And it's more of just an appreciation for him kind of going into his mental health issues over the past 2 years. And I mean, it's something we talked about. John Wall, going to LA now with the Clippers, getting this new contract out of Houston, looking like he's going to play some meaningful basketball here again. And he kind of talked about the 2 years over the pandemic, which is something that I think a lot of people have gone through. But, John Wall had a couple of family members that were lost during this time, passed away. Obviously dealing with all the injuries, finally getting back on the court and then getting hurt again in the off season and just not being able to play. I mean, to put it bluntly, he did contemplate, he straight up openly admitted it. He contemplated suicide at one point. And I think it's a good reminder for everybody that, hey, people talk about, oh, well, don't worry about John Wall. He's got all the money in the world. It just doesn't fix everything. And I am happy to see John Wall back on a basketball court this year, kind of writing his own ending a little bit. But I appreciate when guys of his stature open up like this, because I think it makes it easier for other people to open up like that. And obviously, with DeMar DeRozan and with Kevin Love in the past, those two guys in particular, we've really seen a lot of emphasis put on the mental health part of the game. And I think that the more guys open up like this, the less stigmatized it is, the more people will talk about it. And, it's not just, anybody can have this. It's not just for regular people too. Like, even people that are quote unquote at the top of the world go through this stuff too. It's normal.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Even, it's not NBA, but UFC. I forget the guy, the fighter's name, but he won and used the whole.
What's his name? His name is Electric. I forget it. The Irish guy.
Yeah, but he took his whole post fight moment to really address that and bring that to light and talk about that. So, it's always good to hear somebody talk about it, because there's times where you can feel like you are the only one going through it, which is a weird mental health thing to have when it's going on, if that makes sense. But there are other people that have that feeling and have done it and have gotten through it. So, there's people you can talk to, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. All right, who's fallen for you this week?
Fallen for me goes to Steph Curry.
Wow, a rare Steph Curry L these days.
Oh yeah, well, he brought this upon himself. He made a comment that talking about if he would ever go play for the Hornets, and his response was, "Everybody asked me, you want a 1 year, for the Hornets and come back?" And he said, "I'm not breaking any news right now. I'm not making any promises. All I would say is if there was a team that I want to play for that was not named the Warriors, that would be it." So my falling is going to be the insane amount of headlines that are about to come out about this and that are already out about this, being like, Curry wants to go to the Hornets. And it's like, man, you knew exactly what you were saying when you said that, and now here we are clickbaiting everybody.
Why is anyone surprised by that too? Like isn't that where
Right.
you expect? That'd be the only place I would. First off, I don't think Steph Curry's ever leaving Golden State. Like, let me be as clear as
Right.
possible. But yeah, the only place I would expect him to consider playing at this point is Charlotte, because that's his home. Like, home always reigns supreme over anything.
And if he came out and said something like, I don't know, I would love to play for Philly or the Kings or, you know what, like, it would just, that would be
random. It'd be like, wait, why? It'd be like, I'd be hype, but I'd be like, why?
Well, my first thought would be like, oh, is he in contract negotiations? Like, is he trying to raise the price a little bit? Like,
I mean, look, it would be different. It'd be different if he was still trying to prove it, but obviously Steph Curry's at a point of his career now where there's absolutely nothing left to prove. Like, he's strictly just playing legacy ball at this point.
This is this is kind of off topic, but in topic with NBA and their contract negotiations that they go through, and how sometimes they'll drop little nuggets here and there to kind of stir the pot when they're going through it. My buddies' kids are like super into watching Ninja, the streamer who plays Fortnite.
Oh, I was like American Ninja Warrior.
No, like Ninja.
Okay,
He streams video games on Twitch.
Yep.
Well, I guess he called me because they were all upset because he stopped streaming. He said he needed like a break. And so I was like watching, like he sent me the clip that his kid was like freaking out about it. And all it was Ninja was just like, I need a break. I don't know where, or he goes, I don't know when I'll be back or where I'll be back. And he just looks at the camera and turns it off. And I was like, oh, this dude's going through negotiations with another streaming platform.
Right.
He doesn't need no mental health break. This dude's trying to secure the bag. And he's like, nah, man, maybe he's just tired of playing the same game. I was like, no.
Wait a minute. Did we just play up mental health, and then you're saying he's faking mental health to get the bag?
Listen, come on. His
Simmons did?
No, I don't think he's doing that, because what I was reading about, because after this I went down a conspiracy theory with it. What I was reading about is like Twitch, when they sign streamers, they do it for like 2 years. And he signed 2 years ago. So I was like, he's probably either re-upping he's in the middle of negotiations, because if you're him, you're not going to play games on the platform if you don't have the money. You know what I mean? Why would you do that? So you stop playing.
Got to do it for the love, Justin.
Nah, you stop playing. You create a buzz. Everybody's talking about it. Probably the people over at YouTube start going, oh, man, let's go throw him some money to come over to us. And then next thing you know, here we are. So that's my hot take, is he's just securing the bag. He's signing another deal, and he'll be back in a few days.
All right, well, falling for me is Danilo Gallinari, which unfortunately escalated pretty quickly. We thought he just was torn meniscus, and then they went in and did a full report and unfortunately confirmed that Danilo Gallinari has a torn ACL, going to miss the entire season. He had just signed with Boston. This past offseason was a big addition for them, kind of a reason that, I genuinely think Boston is going to be better than they were last year, which sounds kind of crazy in a year after they made the finals. But I love the Brogdon pickup, and I love the Gallinari pickup. Now, unfortunately, we're just not going to get to see Gallinari. A little bit older at this point, too. He had previously torn this ACL back in 2012. So, a decade ago. So at least that's good. But yeah, for a guy that's older, a little unfortunate. Hopefully he can bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not going to be able to. What was it? Possible return at the end of the season? Is that what the headlines were saying?
It would be a miracle. I mean, it's going to take probably a full year to recover from ACL usually. Yeah. So I would imagine like him returning to the finals in June, if Boston makes it that far again, would be kind of ridiculous.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a bummer, obviously, for Boston and for him. So we wish him a speedy recovery, if you will,
Yeah, no doubt about it. But sticking with Boston, because, like I said, I think they're one of the teams that got better, but I think basically everyone in the Eastern Conference got better. It's kind of crazy. Some just by adding people back, like Milwaukee, for example.
Others by James Harden shirtless workout pics.
Listen, James Harden's looking thin right now. I'm just saying, if we get MVP Harden, look out. But no, I mean, it really is a situation. So last year in the Eastern Conference, you had 1 through 10. I'm just going to rattle these off in order real quick. You had Miami, Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Toronto, Chicago, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Cleveland, and Charlotte. I mean, they basically all got better. It's pretty remarkable.
Charlotte.
Yeah, I think almost all. I wasn't going to say
Okay.
Charlotte. Charlotte is not on that list, and part of it is out of their control, unfortunately, because Miles Bridges is a complete scumbag, apparently. Some of them, I mean, Miami, you lose PJ Tucker. Boston, I think, but even Miami, I still think, look, as long as I got Jimmy, I think they're going to be around. And hopefully Kyle Lowry can just get a little bit healthy. I mean, that's the biggest thing there is he just wasn't even remotely healthy. It felt like all season. Milwaukee and Boston and Philly all got better, I would say. Toronto, I mean, they're younger guys. You would imagine like Scott, like Toronto's going to get better by means of like internal improvement. You know what I mean? Like, so I do. I expect Scotty Barnes to be a lot better in year 2. That should raise their ceiling a little bit. The reason we bring this up initially is because Lonzo Ball's not going to be ready as he continues to recover from knee injury. For the beginning of the season, it looks like, which is pretty unfortunate for Chicago. Like their best lineups when they got off to that hot start last year were when Lonzo was playing. This is a guy who's gotten better every year, but unfortunately, like you talk about injury risks, it's definitely confirmed there with Lonzo at this point. He's just missed a lot of time. I still think Chicago is going to be really good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not really seeing them dropping, but I guess as we tier these teams, because Brooklyn's got KD back, they're running it back. Atlanta brings DeJounte Murray in. Cleveland gets Donovan Mitchell. How do you tier these teams? Who do you think is the favorite? Who do you think is dropping? I mean, I think every team we just mentioned is going to make the playoffs. The only one of these teams that I think could maybe drop out is Charlotte. And to that token, I would imagine the Knicks get in there. I think the Knicks take Charlotte's spot. I don't see Washington doing it. I think Indy's not trying to win games right now. And Detroit and Orlando, I think, will be much better. And I think have young cores to both be excited about. But I think it's a lot of games for them to win.
Well, that's the thing but to that, and I know this contradicts what I've been saying the past few episodes. The Cavs added 22 last season, which would put Orlando at 44 wins, which is what the Cavs have for the 9th seed. So like,
I just think the conference is better now, though, as crazy as it is. Like, I think the degree of adding 22 wins in this particular East is like, there's no softy games anymore. Like even last year, like playing Detroit and Orlando was largely a freebie.
Well, so I guess if I was going to tier it, my top 4 would probably be Miami, Celtics, Bucks, Sixers. I want to throw Nets in there too. That's like top tier, right?
So who's your 1 out of that?
I mean, you got to.
All right, I'm definitive. I think Milwaukee's number 1.
Yeah.
I think Milwaukee is still the best team. They have the best player in basketball. I watched them take Boston to 7 last year without Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
All their core guys are still there with Drew Holiday, with Brook Lopez. They didn't really lose a ton off the bench. Like you brought Connaughton back. Their biggest loss, I guess, was DiVincenzo.
But I guess my thing is, and I get it because they didn't have Middleton. Like I was almost about to say Celtics just because of what I think their point differential essentially can be again next year with how good their defense is going to be. So I kind of have Boston and Milwaukee as like the elite, like top tier in that first tier. Yeah. Heat should probably be there as well. Sixers, I think, should be there. But Sixers and Nets are both in a similar situation of like, you just got to make me feel a little more confident about it because of the way the last season ended a little bit. But to that, and this is why I kind of referenced it at the beginning of the episode is with the Cavs getting so much better, I think I still put them in the next tier with like Atlanta and the Raptors and the Bulls a little bit as the like tier below them, but they're definitely like in the top of that tier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I'm with you in the sense that Milwaukee is my 1. I think Boston is my 2. I don't think there's any real flexibility for me there. I think Boston is. I think the only reason I'm not tempted to put Boston at 1 is because I think it's really hard to get back to the finals.
Sure. Yeah.
And so to that point, I'm just like going to have them a little bit below, but like Boston is right there too. And they have internal guys who should get better. Like Rob Williams, for example, is a guy who I think is going to get a lot better and is going to be healthy, for example. Then I've got Miami at 3. I think Miami is a tier below Milwaukee and Boston, but I do think they're definitive 3. Like I think they're better than pretty much
Yeah.
everyone else.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to give their development the benefit of the doubt too. I've got then my next tier after that is it's like Philly and Brooklyn. I would have Cleveland up there now with Donovan Mitchell for sure. And I would probably sneak Atlanta in there too. I would say that's my 4 through 8.
Well, and don't forget, we're only like what a season from Atlanta essentially going the distance as well, right?
Right. And so basically, I would shift Brooklyn, Atlanta, and Cleveland all up, and I would shift Toronto and Chicago down.
Okay.
I do think Toronto again will be better largely through development. Scotty Barnes, I think, is the key to that, and them kind of taking the next step. But all their guys are still there. You know, Siakam played probably the best season of his career last year, all NBA third team. Fred VanVleet was awesome. So we'll see. But they'll be right there too. Like they're always going to play hard. But the difference between those teams last year were 4 games, and like I don't think they added a ton of top end talent. Where it's like, yeah, Cleveland added Donovan Mitchell. Like I'm going to give them that.
That should be good for maybe 4 more wins.
Right.
You would.
And
imagine.
so I think I'm going to drop Toronto. I think Toronto and Chicago are those next 2 for sure. Chicago, I think I'm more. Like I just think DeRozan will regress a little bit. I think he basically hit the peak of all his numbers last year. And so I just expect a slight regression from DeMar DeRozan, and just with the injuries, like not having Lonzo is going to matter. But I think they're still going to be quite good. Like, don't get me wrong. I think they're going to be there as well. And then that last spot in I think all those teams are ahead of whoever the 10th is going to be. I'm inclined to think with the Knicks getting Brunson again and with Charlotte losing Bridges that the Knicks will jump into that 10th spot in that last play-in one. But I don't think they're a little bit even below that Toronto and Chicago tier in my eyes. And Toronto to me is closer. Like I'm higher on Toronto than I am on Chicago. Like Toronto to me is borderline in that is right there with Brooklyn and Atlanta and Cleveland. Like I don't think Toronto is better than Philly. I don't think they're better than Brooklyn right now, but I would say they're right there with Atlanta and Cleveland for sure. Like it's hard for me to underestimate Toronto after what they did last year because it was so impressive. Like there were no expectations and they didn't even have quote unquote the guy and still went out and won 48 games.
Well, that's kind of similar. Like, that I'm trying to figure out what I was trying to find right here was like the how many close games the Cavs lost, so that we kind of get an idea of how many of those might have gone the Cavs' way with a Donovan Mitchell who can be their go-to scorer,
Yeah, no, 100%.
Because I feel like that would be kind of, it would show us a little bit of what we could expect potentially next year and how many more they could add, but I'm not finding it quick enough, so we'll just have to accept our fate. So, I mean, but that's the thing is, and that was kind of what led me to at least say with the Cavs earlier was like, it's a great move. I don't think it puts them, in my opinion, like we were talking about, in that top tier quite yet. Puts them close.
But they could be.
They could. If and the other thing is like, stuff happens during the season. If someone gets hurt or a team's just is not their year, you know what I mean? Like then things start flipping around, but I think they're very close. They're just not fully in there yet. They're still pretty young as well. So I don't think it's one of those like,
it would take a big year to leap from Mobley, another leap from Garland and Donovan Mitchell to continue to be excellent. And like for everything to go right, but like that's possible. Like I can see that happening. And I guess that's my point is like, you just want to keep your window open and have those like lanes to get there. Like the Cavs have ways to improve where they could win this. I don't think they're that far behind Milwaukee and Boston. I guess that's my point. Like this isn't a situation where you're chasing, it was always the debate when Golden State had Durant, right? Where it's like, do you really want to chase this team? Like are you going to actually beat them? And why I respected Houston so much for going all in and trying to beat them and pushing them the way they did, and for the Cavs for trying to beat them the way they did. But you kind of knew it was like an unfair fight, where I don't feel that way with Milwaukee and Boston. Like I do think they're better than the rest of these Eastern teams, but like they're far from invincible.
No, I agree. They're not like a super team that's just you can't stop them.
It just is remarkable. Like it's remarkable to me how much better Like, this is maybe the best Eastern Conference of our lifetimes. Like, I'll have to go look up in the 90s and just stack some of these up. I haven't done that quite yet, but I can't think of, because we're at the point now where it's like, yo, 1 through 10 is going to be really good in the Eastern Conference. Like, I remember when 7 and 8 were a joke, where it's like now,
Yeah.
if that was still the scenario and we didn't have this playing games, like, you would more than likely have a really good team missing the playoffs. Like, probably 2 of them.
Yeah, it's crazy that we've come a little bit full circle, whereas I feel like for most of the times when we do this podcast, the Western Conference is way more stacked than the East.
It's been for 20 years, basically.
And then you look, but even last year, just going off win losses of teams that made even the play-in tournament. I mean, what the Hawks and the Hornets were the lowest at 43. In the West, you had the Pelicans and the Spurs at 34 and 36 wins getting in it, and the Lakers were almost there with 33. Like, it's not like the Knicks were at 37. Like, there was a bit of a distance between the Hornets and the Knicks, where the Lakers were right there at 33 trying to get in that 10 seed.
And let me be as clear as possible. I think the top of the West can beat anybody. I mean, we saw it obviously last year with Golden State, but like, put the Clippers in there. I'm
their
really high on
tiers are
Denver.
more separated. Like, their tiers are more separated than in the East, like we were talking about.
You get to 5 in the Western Conference, and then it starts to drift pretty quickly. And the bad teams in the West, I think, are going to be really bad.
But you might be able to say 6. I know we haven't seen it yet No, you can definitely say 6 because the Clippers would pop up there.
Yeah, if you pop this, outside of the Clippers, Denver, Dallas, Golden State, Memphis, and Phoenix.
Maybe
and I would argue Minnesota. Minnesota should be there too. But it gets bleak after that. Like, the Pelicans should be better, but they're not. I don't think they're great yet. The Spurs are going to stink. The Lakers are a hard TBD. The Kings I'm higher on than I've been in a while, but I think they're still floating around playing position. Portland, TBD. I need to see what they do, but still kind of floating around playing position. And then you just get straight up bad. Like, Oklahoma City is going to be bad. Houston's going to be bad. I don't think there's, like, Indy is maybe the only team in the East where I'm going to go, wow, they might stink.
Yeah, well, and I get, because why would the Pistons do it? Why would the Orlando Magic do it? Unless they decide halfway through the season that they're not getting that many wins anyway, so they might as well just let the young guys get the practice and try to get that another high pick,
And injuries will happen too. Like, that is the other reality. Like, injuries will happen, things will change very quickly. Knock on wood. I mean, we've already lost Chet Holmgren for the season. Now Danilo Gallinari. Let's not lose any more people for the season before we've even started training camp at this point. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of the Driving Dish NBA podcast. Appreciate you guys as always. We will be back with Pirtle next week too, we promise. Been having a lot of fun with that, but just Donovan Mitchell news, figured take front and center. In the meantime, leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Google Play Store, Spreaker, Spotify, TuneIn, Player FM, anywhere, and you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yes, and be sure to follow us on social media, specifically YouTube, where you can find us. Just search Drive and Dish NBA on YouTube, and we'll pop up there.